Okay, all yours.
Ethics review questions instead of section. How's that?
Whatever. Yeah.
You have two definitions of the term ethics. Area of study, the discipline dealing with what is good and bad and with moral duty and obligation, and principles of conduct governing an individual or a group. List 4 reasons why ethics training can be a benefit of property tax professionals. Ethics training can help us make correct choices. Ethics training helps ensure that we keep our obligations to the public. Ethics training helps improve public perception of our profession, and ethics training gives us common frame of reference for conduct. Who is required to register with the TDLR? In what circumstances can a local official decide who must register? The chief appraiser of an appraisal district, an appraisal supervisor or assistant, a property tax appraiser, an appraisal engineer, and any other person authorized to render judgment on, recommend, or certify an appraised value to the appraisal review board of an appraisal district. A person who engages in appraisal of property for ad valorem tax purposes for an appraisal district or a taxing unit, an assessor collector other than a county assessor collector, a collector or another person designated by a governing body as the chief administrator of the taxing unit's assessment functions, collection functions, or both, and a person who performs assessment or collection functions for a taxing unit and is required to register by the chief administrator of the unit's tax office. What is the official name of the law that governs registration and certification of property tax professionals? The Property Tax Professional Certification Act. What is the name of the agency that registers and certifies tax professionals? The Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. What is a rule? It's a type of law enacted by a state agency. If a person is registered with TDLR, compliance with the TDLR rules is mandatory or optional?
No, it's mandatory.
Well, how come optional is there?
I don't know, but mandatory is highlighted and bolded.
Okay, it's mandatory. You got to follow the rules.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the sentence, if a person is registered, compliance with the TDLR rules is mandatory. It's not going to be optional.
It was there. I was going to read it. I thought these were only answers. Okay, is this the back and forth that irritates you on the recordings?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Registrants must not violate the Act or any part of Chapter 94 Texas Administrative Code or the Code of Ethics. Registrants must timely respond to TDLR investigative requests. Registrants must notify TDLR of employment changes within 30 days. Registrants must not engage in
improper influence, conflicts of interest. You see how that works?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't know if you had.
Yeah.
This whole thing is laid out weird like that.
Okay. So again, registrants must not engage in improper influence, conflicts of interest, unfair treatment, abuse of powers, misuse of titles, or discrimination. CAD registrants must be in compliance with reports issued by the comptroller under its MAP reviews, Section 5.102 Tax Code. A registrant can act in a private capacity on a personal tax matter as long as the registrant does not use his or her official position to influence the outcome of the tax matter. What principle must guide each registrant? Taxation must be fair and uniform. In general, a registrant should not accept a gift that might reasonably tend to influence the registrant in performance of the registrant's official duties. A registrant must not use information received in connection with her official duties unless the information could be known by ordinary means to any citizen. A registrant must not engage in official acts that are dishonest, misleading, fraudulent, deceptive, or in violation of law. A registrant must avoid the appearance of impropriety in conducting the registrant's official duties. A registrant must not accept an appraisal, assessment, or collection assignment if the registrant has an unrevealed bias or personal interest. A registrant must disclose a personal interest that would affect an assignment or responsibility before accepting the assignment or responsibility. What two sources of standards must be followed when registrants perform appraisal or assessment services? The Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice and Generally Accepted Appraisal, Assessment, or Collection Practices. A registrant may not accept a benefit in return for favorable treatment. I take it I read that right. Do you know where I'm at?
I was adjusting the microphone. Yeah,
Okay.
It's the bolded.
A registrant must not knowingly testify falsely or influence anyone else into doing so. A registrant must not knowingly mislead any member of the public who makes a reasonable inquiry or request on tax matters. Manipulating data is a violation of the ethics rule if it is done to support a predetermined value. What sources of guidance must a registrant follow in calculating a rate for official purposes? Law, rule, and written guidance of the Comptroller of Public Accounts. A registrant cannot provide information to a private party unless the information is provided or reasonably available to all persons. A conflict of interest is a conflict between the private interest and the official responsibilities of a person in a position of trust. A registrant must disclose in writing if an assignment will affect a registrant's relative by consanguinity within the third degree. Sorry, I just can't say it. A registrant must disclose in writing all outside employment. A registrant must disclose in writing any financial interest in any private business or real estate or real property that is subject to the appraisal district or taxing entity that employs the registrant. Written disclosure under Rule 94.72 must be made to the taxing entity or appraisal district that employs the registrant. Registrants must not invest in transactions which create a conflict of interest or affect independent judgment or performance in the official position. A registrant cannot engage in activity outside of his or her office that will affect the registrant's impartiality or performance. Under what circumstances may a registrant use agency resources for his own personal benefit when any member of the general public makes a similar use? A registrant may not endorse services or products of any person or firm when acting in an official capacity. A registrant may only use his or her title in performance of the registrant's official duties. What titles are addressed by Rule 94.73? Registered Professional Appraiser, Registered Tax Assessor Collector, Registered Taxes Collector. The following items would not violate the Penal Code provisions concerning gifts to government services. A non-cash gift valued at less than $50. A gift conferred on account of a relationship independent of the recipient's official status. A benefit to which the person is legally entitled or has given legitimate consideration. Food, lodging, transportation, entertainment, or Food, lodging, transportation, or entertainment accepted as a guest of the person giving it. Excuse me.
Bliss.
A fee prescribed by law. An item issued by the government entity to allow use of its facilities or property. A political contribution as defined by Title 15 Election Code. Complementary legal services relating to will, power of attorney, advance directive, or other estate planning document. All of those were items that would not violate the penal code. Oh, okay. That was really, ugly.
That's what I was telling you.
A person violates the penal code provisions of the abuse of official capacity if the person misuses governmental resources with the intent to obtain a benefit or harm or defraud another. The prohibition on gifts to public servants applies to employees of an appraisal district because the appraisal district is an agency that conducts investigations or inspections. A person who offers a witness a benefit for false testimony violates which penal code provision? Section 36.05, tampering with witness. Acceptance of a gift in return for a favorable decision constitutes bribery, even if the gift has a value of less than $50. A public official may accept food, lodging, and transportation in connection with a seminar in which the public official renders services, provided the official services are not merely perfunctory. Acts that may constitute official oppression include intentionally subjecting a person to unlawful mistreatment, arrest, detention, search, seizure, disposition, or an unlawful asset or assessment or lien. It is a crime to acquire a pecuniary interest in a property if the person is a public official and is relying on information to which the person has access by virtue of the person's office or employment and that has not been made public. Appropriation of property is unlawful if the property is appropriated without the owner's consent, or if the person who appropriates the property knows the property is stolen, or a law enforcement officer represents to the person that the property is stolen. The category of offense for unlawful appropriation of property is increased if the actor was a public servant at the time of the offense and the property appropriated came into the actor's custody by virtue of the actor's status as a public servant. A chief appraiser who communicates with an ARB member outside of the hearing regarding issues in a pending protest violates which Texas Code section? Section 6.411. Except in an open meeting or in a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing litigation, a chief appraiser cannot communicate with a member of the chief appraiser's board of directors regarding what? The appraisal of property in the appraisal district. If either of these is related to the chief appraiser within the second degree, the chief appraiser cannot continue in office. A person who appraises property for proceedings under the tax code, a person who represents property owners for compensation within the appraisal district in proceedings under the tax code. A chief appraiser cannot refer anyone to another person for the purpose of obtaining an appraisal. The term referring to employment of one's relatives is nepotism. According to the general nepotism statute, a public official cannot take office or the relative must resign in a governmental agency that employs one of the public official's relatives within the third degree by consanguinity or the second degree by affinity. Damn it. Are persons who share a common ancestor related by affinity or by consanguinity? I'm sorry. I can't. A chief appraiser who accepts a gift valued at more than $250 from a prospective contractor with the appraisal district must file a disclosure form. What is the purpose of a complaint? To notify TDLR that a violation may have taken place. At what stage is a notice of alleged violation, a NOAV, sent? When the investigator decides enforcement action should begin. List the various types of disciplinary action the TDLR may take against a registrant: suspension, revocation, deny application, probation, or fine. A registrant is required to report misconduct if the registrant has observed commission of a felony and believes serious bodily injury or death might have resulted. Failure to do so would encourage another registrant to violate code of ethics. Failure to do so would violate the registrant's obligation not to withhold information in an investigation or proceeding. Failure to do so would violate a registrant's obligation to uphold the honor and dignity of the tax profession. I got nothing but blank pages.
Keep going.
You want me to read the appendix?
Yeah. Still do.
Who is required to be registered with the TDLR? A chief appraiser, appraisal supervisor, assistant, a person who engages in appraisal of property, an assessor collector other than county assessor collector, a person who performs assessment or collection functions, occupations code, the code citation app. What's application?
I don't know.
Do you want me to read that part?
No. Just read
the answer.
Yeah, occupations code section 1151.151. Just read that part.
Oh, okay. So occupations code section 1151.151. 151. How many days notice must a registrant give of any changes in their employment? 30 days. According to TDLR Rule 94.70C, responsibilities of a registrant, that's general. A registrant must carry out duties in a way that avoids the appearance of what? Impropriety. According to TDLR Rule 94.105, Code of Ethics, or Ethic. Concerning a benefit on a public official in return for the official's decision is bribery. No. Conferring a benefit on a public official in return for the official's decision is bribery. That's in relation to Penal Code Section 36.02. A registrant must disclose outside employment to avoid conflicts of interest. According to TDLR Rule 94.72B, responsibilities of a registrant, conflicts of interest. According to the Texas Penal Code, what is the definition of benefit? Benefit means anything reasonably regarded as pecuniary gain or advantage, according to Penal Code Section 36.01. According to the Tax Code, an appraisal district may not employ or contract with an individual or the spouse of an individual that is related to the chief appraiser within the first degree by consanguinity or affinity. Tax Code Section 6.05. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say it. According to the Occupations Code, after investigation, TDLR may dismiss complaint without conducting a hearing if, good gracious. After investigation, the department may dismiss a complaint in part or entirely without conducting a hearing if the complaint does not credibly allege a violation of this chapter or the standards established by the Commission for registrants under this chapter. After investigation, the department shall dismiss a complaint in part or entirely without conducting a hearing if the complaint challenges the imposition or failure to waive penalties or interest under sections 33.01 and 33.011 Tax Code, the appraised value of a property, the appraisal methodology, the grant or denial of an exemption form taxation, or any matter for which Title I Tax Code specifies a remedy, including an action that a property owner is entitled to protest before an appraisal review board under Section 41.41A Tax Code, and the subject matter of the complaint has not been finally resolved in the complaint's favor by an appraisal review board, a governing body, an arbitrator, a court, or a state office of administrative hearings under Section 2003.901 Government Code. All of that is because of Occupations Code Section 1151.204. If that's on a test, just saying. When a public official commits theft with respect to property that the person obtains through the official's office, the degree of offense is increased to the next higher category of offense in regards to Penal Code Section 31.03F. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must apply equally and fairly any appraisal, assessment, or consulting service to USPAP and generally accepted appraisal, assessment, or collection practices applicable to an assignment, according to TDLR Rule 94.71A, something resp of a reg equal and fair treatment. Ooh, forbidden activities. You want me to read that?
No, I won't. Maybe we should engage in some.
Stop that. Am I reading this for real?
Yeah.
Okay. Improper influence.
Read the column.
That's done. Okay, so the ethics violation is improper influence. The example is using position to determine a favorable outcome in a hearing on one's own property. Stop looking at me. Ethics violation, conflict of interest. The example is failure to disclose a second job, such as part-time position selling real estate in an adjoining county. Ethics violation, unfair treatment. The example is valuing property in some economic area that at different rates. Ethics violation of discrimination. Example, treating one's property owner different from another based on personal biases. Ethics violation, abuse of powers. Example, using information obtained through office for personal gain. Ethics violation, misuse of titles. Example, using TDLR designation in a personal business venture. Name that punishment. Am I reading it? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Violation 36.02, bribery, knowingly offering, soliciting, or accepting a benefit as consideration for a decision, opinion, recommendation, or vote. It's a second-degree felony. The punishment is imprisonment for 2 to 20 years and a fine not to exceed $10,000. Violation 36.05, tampering with a witness. What?
No, sir, I didn't say anything.
Offering or conferring any benefit on a witness or prospective witness in an official proceeding, coercing a witness to testify falsely, withhold testimony, elude legal process or summons, or delay prosecution. That's a second-degree felony, third-degree felony, or a most serious offense charged. Imprisonment for 2 to 10 years, and the fine is not to exceed $10,000. Violation 36.07, acceptance of an honorarium. What exactly is an honorarium? I guess. That is soliciting, accepting, or agreeing to accept an honorarium, speaker's fee, in consideration for services related to the public servant's position or duties. That's a Class A misdemeanor. It's a fine not to exceed $4,000, confinement in jail for up to 1 year or both. The violation 36.08, gift to a public servant by a person subject to his jurisdiction. Soliciting, accepting, or agreeing to accept a gift from a person subject to inspection, investigation, a person interested or likely to become interested in a contract or payment, or a person interested in matter before the tribunal. The offense is a Class A misdemeanor. The fine is not to exceed $4,000. Confinement in jail for up to a year or both. The violation 36.09, offering gift to a public servant. offering, conferring, or agreeing to confer any benefit on a public servant known to be prohibited by law. Exceptions include fees prescribed by law, non-cash item valued at less than $50, or items conferred independent of official status. It's a Class A misdemeanor. The fine is not to exceed $4,000. Confinement in jail for up to a year or both. The violation 39.02, abuse of an official capacity, misusing government property, services, personnel, or anything of value with intent to obtain a benefit or with intent to harm or defraud another. Anything from a Class C misdemeanor to a first-degree felony. Class C is a fine not to exceed $500. The first-degree felony is imprisonment in the institutional division for 5 to 99 years and a fine not to exceed $10,000. Violation 39.03, official oppression, subjecting another to unlawful mistreatment, arrest, detention, search, seizure, assessment, or lien, or sexual harassment. That's a Class A misdemeanor or third-degree felony. A fine is not to exceed $4,000. Confinement in jail for up to 1 year or both. Third-degree felony, imprisonment for 2 to 10 years, and a fine not to exceed $10,000. The violation, 39.06, misuse of official information, relying on information that has not been made public to speculate on the basis of the information, disclosing or using information for a non-governmental purpose if it has not been made public, soliciting or receiving information that has not been made public. That's a Class C or third-degree felony. Class C is a fine is not to exceed $500. It's a third-degree felony, imprisonment for 2 to 10 years, and a fine not to exceed $10,000. Okay, activity, key ex parte communication. So an ARB member communicates with another person. The property is used as a sample or comparable property. Is this acceptable or unacceptable? It is acceptable. A CAD staff member communicates with an ARB member about issuance of orders. That is acceptable. An ARB member discusses the merits of a protest outside of the hearing. That's unacceptable. An ARB member discusses a protest matter with legal counsel. That is acceptable. A chief appraiser discusses an appraisal matter with a member of the board of directors as they enter a hearing. That is unacceptable. A county assessor collector discusses routine matters with the chief appraiser as they enter a monthly meeting. That is acceptable. The CAD board of directors conducts a closed meeting. That is acceptable. Let me get my hand. A CAD staff member communicates with an ARB member about the status of a protest prior to the protest hearing. That is unacceptable. Don't do that. Okay. According to the TDLR rules, a registrant must not use agency resources for personal benefits unless any member of the general public could make use of the agency resources. According to TDLR Rule 94.72F, responsibilities of a registrant, conflicts of interest. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must not accept anything of value from any party other than their employer as an appraiser, assessor, or collector that might influence them in the discharge of their duties. According to TDLR Rule 94.100, Code of Ethics 2, what is the offensive violation of ex parte communication rules? 6.15 Class C misdemeanor or 6.411 Class A misdemeanor. According to Tax Code sections 6.15D and 6.411D. That doesn't make any sense, but whatever. What are the definitions of commission, committee, and department listed together? Occupations Code sections 1151.002, 7 7A through 7A, 7B, and 7C, who must review and approve all continuing education programs for registrants, the Comptroller of Public Accounts, the Property Tax Assistance Division, according to Occupations Code Section 1151.1581B. With regard to acceptance of honorarium, a public servant commits an offense if the public servant solicits, accepts, or agrees to accept an honorarium in consideration for services that the public servant would not have been requested to provide but for the public servant's official position or duties. That's according to Penal Code Sections 36.07. According to TDLR rules, a registrant must avoid misleading a member of the public who makes a reasonable inquiry about tax matters. That's according to TDLR Rule 94.71D, Responsibilities of a Registrant, Equal and Fair Treatment. According to TDLR rules, a registrant may act in a purely private capacity regarding a personal tax matter as long as he does not use his official position to influence the outcome such a dispute. Okay. That's according to TDLR Rule 94.70I, Responsibilities of a Registrant General. Where do you find a description of the Chief Appraiser Training Program? In the Occupations Code. Occupations Code Section 1151.164. And according to TDLR procedural rules, what is the time frame to file a complaint? 2 years. That's according to TDLR Rule 60.200B under complaints. And that is the end of the road, kids.